What's up, Bucs Squad? I'm your host, Jaron Spor. I'm going to tell you why Tampa has new life.
I'm Marcus Ray, and I don't trust the Bucs defense right now, and I'll tell you why here in shortly.
I'm James Yarcho, and I'm going to tell you why there are no excuses anymore.
Hey, Tampa Bay, it's the Buccaneers squad. Everything Tampa Bay Buccaneers every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the Sunshine State, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. With a touch of the Buccaneer way, the Buccaneer Squad Show starts now.
What's up, everybody? Real quick, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about today because we got to break down the Bucs and the Panthers game, which now is in an even bigger game because of what just happened with Carolina this past weekend. Then we'll dive into the injury report. Then we'll go around the NFL, talk about some games that you guys should be looking forward to this weekend. Maybe recap some games for this past weekend since we haven't done a show since last Thursday. Then we will give our score predictions. But yeah, I mean, to break down this pretty simply is what Carolina team shows up. I mean, the Carolina team that was on a roll or the Carolina team that's lost to the Saints twice. If you're a Bucs fan, you hope the one that showed up against the Saints twice shows up. I think the Saints game for this past weekend, and I know people are going to say, well, Tampa lost to them too, but I think that was the first time we've really seen pressure on Carolina, and they didn't just live up to it. And so I think you see a team that hasn't been there yet.
Well, I think you also see a team that was playing with a little bit of house money because they wound up with the same record as the Bucs at the same time, and nobody really predicted that. And we were thinking that these two out of last three versus the Carolina Panthers probably wouldn't matter. But I think the Bucs shouldn't get too excited about what the Saints pulled off by beating Carolina because they got outscored and beat by Atlanta at home, and they have their own business to fix. So they lost to that same exact team. So I guess the only way to settle the score to find out who's better is to find out head-to-head. So I think the Bucs are really struggling in zone defense. They hung their hat on man when they were winning, and then they started to get exposed. And then when they came out of the bye week, everybody just destroyed them as far as their man defense. Now Todd Bowles is back to playing zone defense. And, you know, as you see on fourth and 14, they're playing cover two, and the young corner jumps the route in front of them. Even when Bowles even says on the headset, hey, play the sticks. So I just think this is a situation where Tampa Bay more pressure is on them. The Panthers really, when you watch that game, they found a way to lose to the Saints. I mean, it wasn't necessarily like the call at the end. I mean, I don't know what defense that was where you just give up the middle of the field, quarterback sliding, shuck for the, try to get in field goal range. Defensive back hits them. Next thing you know, personal foul, field goal range. I just think the Panthers found a way to lose just like Tampa Bay did, and they both lost in the fourth quarter. So I think you got two teams right here this week going into this one with an identity crisis. Somehow they both lucked up to be in first place, so it's not a great division. Nobody wants to play the Saints right now. They have nothing to lose. They figured it out a little bit too late, and they actually dialed up the Panthers in between the hashes too. And Shuck made some throws that I just didn't think he could make. But I will say this, though, James. I think Carolina, the way they run the football, could be a problem, even with a patchwork offensive line. Coker and those guys found a way to make some plays. They got two running backs. I mean, Bryce Young, you can't trust him all the time, but he has been getting better from year to year. I just think this is a situation Tampa has to get up early and possibly hold on.
Yeah, and Jaron, you mentioned that the pressure was on the Panthers in that game and they kind of crumbled. You could also look at it from the opposite direction, that they now have that experience of what that pressure means. They can learn from that. They can build off of that and say, look, we made a couple of mistakes that cost. The Saints didn't beat us. We beat us. So going into this game against Tampa Bay, Dave Canales is going to pull out all the stops. He wants to beat his former team. he wants to take this Panther squad from worst to first in a very quick hurry. But you take a look, Marcus, you mentioned Rico Dowdle, Chuba Hubbard. That is going to be incredibly difficult to defend. And we've seen Tet McMillan kind of with a reverse year of Ibuka. Ibuka started off red hot. Tet was nowhere to be found. He's come on stronger. Now, he didn't have a great game against the Saints, but he could have a great game against this Buccaneers defense that can't seem to stop anyone. I would also expect Tommy Tremble to have a huge game at the tight end position. But you don't have Zion McCollum, and I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, but he hasn't been playing great. So unless you're going to shadow Teteroa McMillan, I'm sorry, I forgot he doesn't like to be called Tet. If you're not going to shadow Teteroa McMillan with Jamel Dean, which is not something that Todd Bowles is going to do, he's going to have his opportunities out there. So you have a potentially high octane Panthers offense going against a Bucs defense that is in an absolute tailspin. And then on the flip side, you have a Bucs offense that we saw flashes on Thursday night of what this offense could have been all season long, right? You had Evans doing his thing, Godwin with the clutch catch in the end zone and the 2-point conversion. Ibuka caught all of his catchable targets, and then even Jalen McMillan with a couple of really nice grabs. So you saw what could have been. This is a game to me that the first 1 to 30 is going to win. This is going to be a high-scoring affair because both of these defense can be taken advantage of, and it's going to kind of become a shootout between these two squads. It's going to be whoever has the ball last or whichever offense makes the biggest mistake at the most inopportune time.
Yeah, and I want to touch on two things that was said. First by Marcus, the running game. I mean, yeah, they're one of the better running teams in the NFL. They went through a stretch of 7 games of 110 yards or more on the ground. Then they went through a stretch of 3 straight games where they had 75 yards or less. Then they bounced back with the Rams win where they had 164 yards rushing. And even in the loss to the Saints, they had 127 yards rushing. But the Saints, when they beat them the first time, held them to 73 yards. Then the Falcons, who beat them in overtime, held them to 67. And then San Francisco, who beat them, held them to 69. So that's really been the key right there. If you can shut down the running game, the question is, can Tampa do that? That's what we'll have to wait and see. As far as what James said about the offense, I did think there was a lot of things that was promising with the Bucs offense in this last game. You saw the flashes of what this offense could be, but then the critical turnover late in the game, missing the third down to Ibuka, stuff like that ended up costing them. But just the kind of watching that game and then reading all the reactions almost a week since the game has happened, you would have thought the offense lost the game. And I understand they threw the pick, they didn't complete the third down, but it was because of the defense. And it reminds me a lot of when Baker was at Oklahoma, really. Oklahoma had a terrible defense, and Baker could score a touchdown on 8 out of 9 drives, but if he didn't on that 9th drive and they lost the game, it was, well, the offense blew it. The offense lost it for him. And it's like, no, the defense just can't get like torched like they are all the time. And so I think we as fans need to, I understand we're so frustrated with the defense that we just kind of almost have to, we're almost giving them a pass because like we're expecting that, but we have to look at it at the whole picture. Like the defense is what's costing this team games.
Well, without question, and the offense hasn't found a way to actually finish. I mean, they've had the ball in some situations where they couldn't score too. I mean, and then special teams, obviously set them up for failure right from the jump against the Saints. I just think, Baker has to be careful with the football this week. It could come down to the turnover battle. Obviously, the Panthers have 2 pretty good corners out there at Horn and Jackson, but I think you can expose their safeties a little bit, and they don't tackle very well. They also don't get to the quarterback very often either. So this could be a situation that favors the Bucs offensive line. I think Tampa Bay needs to run the ball first. I know all of the receivers are back and they're healthy, but I think if they establish the run, keep Carolina's offense off the field, that's how you protect your defense. When I played in college, the great Lloyd Carr says a great offense can score fast, protect the lead, and don't turn the ball over. And if you can do that, then that gives you ball control. That means you can play from behind, and it means that your defense stays off the field. So I don't always think the offense protects the defense enough. They don't finish drives, with points, and they don't always get first downs, and they've been horrible on third down at time. The bright spot is going to be Mike Evans. I mean, just watching his performance in that last game, he didn't play like a guy coming off a collarbone injury. I think there was a sense of urgency when he was out there, and obviously you saw his reaction after they walked off the field when they lost. So there was some leadership there. But I just think, though, with Carolina, they actually were in position to beat the Saints. They just couldn't put them away. And if you remember, I think it was in the third quarter, Panthers might have been up 10 or something, possibly even 14. I can't remember, but there was a fumble that was right in Saints territory that they were able to recover. And it's always 4 or 5 plays, James, that can swing a game. And I think that was one of them. And then obviously you had the penalty at the end. And then Carolina found a way to not be able to move the ball when in a 2-minute situation. I mean, Bryce got sacked. Offense looked flustered. I think both teams are actually going to play. I think it's going to be a sloppy game. But I do think there are going to be some points scored. But I expect a few penalties. I expect a couple of turnovers. And the loser of this game, I'm going to put it to you this way. Whoever wins this game is going to win the next one too.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And you take a look at the way these two defenses kind of compare to one another. Marcus, you said you don't have faith in the Bucs defense. And you take a look at them compared to Carolina. Carolina is 30th in sacks per dropback. They're 29th in third down conversion rate. They're 26th in fourth down conversion rate. And then you look at the Bucs, 19th in sacks, 20th in third down conversion rate, which isn't great, but it's better than Carolina. Fifth in the NFL in fourth down conversion rate as a defensive squad. But here's where it flips and where my concern comes in for this game. Red zone efficiency on the defensive side of the ball, Carolina's 12th. The Bucs are 30th. Goal to go efficiency, the Carolina Panthers are 22nd. That's not great, but the Bucs are 29th. So there's only 3 teams worse than them in goal to go efficiency. So, we've witnessed this Todd Bowles bend don't break defense for multiple years, and they've done a great job with it up until now. Whereas Carolina, they are bending and they're not breaking. They're also 7th in the NFL in interceptions per opposing quarterback's pass attempts. They're opportunistic. They're not going to give up a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. They're not going to give up a lot of touchdowns in the 10 zone, and they will take advantage of any mistakes you make. It's going to be whether or not Baker can play well enough to not get sucked into making those mistakes, and if the defense can actually get that one stop that we know that they're going to need. It would also help that if the ball hits the turf and there's 6 players around it and only one Carolina Panther, I don't know, maybe recover the fumble. Those kind of things can change games.
Yeah, and I was looking at Carolina's schedule. They've turned people over in 9 out of the 14 games, which is a decent amount. The thing is, though, that when they do, they usually do it in bunches. In 3 of those games, they've turned over the team 3 times, and in 2 of those, they've turned them over twice. So the turnovers usually come in bunches for Carolina, and so they're got to be able to Tampa not turn the ball over. And I will say, when I was saying that earlier about Baker in Oklahoma, I'm not saying Baker's playing great because he's not, but I thought this last game was, at least early before the pick, was the closest he had looked to his early season form when he was playing at MVP level. Now, he didn't finish. Like Marcus mentioned, he threw the pick. He missed a Bucs on a first down that would have sealed the game. So he wasn't great either, and he needs to play better this week. But I feel like going into this game, all the pressure is on Carolina. And the reason why I believe that is because Tampa needs to win 2 of the next 3 to win to win the division and go to the playoff. And it doesn't matter what 2 you win. You just have to beat Carolina once, and then you have to beat Miami. And Miami, they're saying that they're looking at everything, including possibly benching Tua and all this stuff. So, like, Miami should be a game that you should win. Now, you should have beat the Saints also, but that's and beat the Falcons. But that's a game you should win. And then the last Panthers game is at home. So, like, this is it for Carolina, in my opinion. Like, they got to win this one because then that puts the pressure on Tampa heading into the end of the season. So we'll see how it all plays out. But all right, coming up next, we're going to go on, talk about the injury report, give you an update on that heading into Sunday's game. So don't go anywhere. All right, well, NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. Just looking at the lines for this week, Tampa's actually favored by 3.5 on FanDuel, minus 164 on the money line, and 45.5 is the over-under. A good example of an in-game bet, Mike Evans, the way he was playing last week. Maybe you put a bet on his receiving yards the rest of the game or something like that because he was having a heck of a game. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, Bucs, while we're back with another segment, just a reminder, this is just extra content that we provide with the Squad Show 2 times a week. Doesn't take anything away from what James does. He does great work with his daily show, and then obviously he does his post-game reactions as well. But let's dive into the injury report. Weirdly enough, the NFL.com did not have the injury report like they usually do, but I went to Sports Illustrated. That's where I'm getting this from, so hopefully this is accurate. But it says Cade Otton, Tyke Smith, Dennis, and Zion McCollum all questionable for this game. For the Panthers, they only have one. Tershawn Wharton is also questionable. So some key guys, obviously some starters that they really need to get back, especially with two of them being in the secondary. I know McCollum hasn't had a great year, but still.
Zion's on the IR. His season's done.
Okay. They haven't listed as questionable, so I don't know what they're talking about. That's what I said. I prefaced it with the Sports Illustrated comment. But anyways, what are you guys' thoughts on the injury report and guys we're getting back?
Go ahead.
Or hopefully getting back.
Oh, yeah, I'll start with Zion McCollum because that's obviously the biggest one. You know, he got the big contract before the season. You were expecting him to build off of what he did in 2024. Instead, he looks more like the way he did in 2023. Has not been great, has had his struggles, but this is going to give you a glimpse of what Benjamin Morrison can do, right? And longtime Locked On Bucs listeners and viewers know that was my guy. I was pounding the table. I started talking about Benjamin Morrison joining this team back in November of last year. And so he's had his struggles. He's had some really nice moments, but he's also had his struggles. Now, I maintain that outside of quarterback, corner is the hardest position to transition from college to the NFL. So there's going to be some growing pains. On top of that, you have the incredibly complex Todd Bowles scheme that they're having to go through. But now you get 3 full games of Benjamin Morrison being the starter. You're going to start to be able to see the evaluation. You're going to be able to start to see some of the traits moving forward. What the concern is that it does take a while to develop, and he's been dealing with a hamstring for most of the year. He's missed a lot of time, which is not ideal. That could be something that the Panthers attack. That could be kind of, if they can get Tet lined up across from Morrison, that might be the matchup that they're looking for to really continue to push the offense down the field. The other one that I want to throw out there isn't an injury so much as the re-addition of linebacker Anthony Walker. Now, he was signed as a free agent, was injured all through training camp, didn't make the 53-man, gets picked up by the Colts. The Bucs just signed him off their practice squad. That tells you everything you need to know about the linebacker situation in Tampa. Levante David has lost a couple of steps. Voss is not that guy. Deion Jones, not that guy. So I'm curious to see how they're going to work Anthony Walker into all of this and what kind of role he's going to play, if he is active this week. And then keep an eye on JPP. Who knows if they're so desperate for any semblance of pass rush help that they go ahead and activate JPP in this game.
When you sign guys this late in the year off the practice squad, a lot of times it's so that you can protect them for your roster and in the offseason and for next year. When I played for the Raiders a long time ago, they signed a couple of guys off the practice squad, elevated them. They actually went out there and played, and then it kind of gave them the rights to that player in the offseason. Dennis, obviously, he's on the questionable list for the injured reserve, but if you have to go with Walker, I mean, the good thing about it is he knows at least some of the playbook. He was in camp. I mean, he was a part of the system, because when you start activating guys and things like that, they have to learn the plays. I mean, just think about a guy like Phillip Rivers getting in there, just getting, playing with his kids, and next thing you know, he's dropping back, throwing the ball at 40 plus. So part of it is a learning curve. His role could be on special teams. Could be a guy that comes off the bench or comes along. It just depends on what his learning curve is. But I also think too, Cade Otton is a guy that I think this offense misses. He's probably not the toughest guy on the team, but he is a pretty good football player whenever he decides he wants to catch the football and block sometimes. I just think that when you have all those wide receivers, that they're missing a presence in the middle. They're missing a check down guy for Baker, I think, in the offense. And, they tried to use Godwin as a check down guy. He ran a couple of spot routes. They try to get him the ball so he can catch in space and run. And then as far as Tyke Smith, be interesting to see what his status would be, because I think he's a guy that can definitely help a struggling pass defense. So offensive line, you still got Bredesen out, obviously, right? And he's on injured reserve. So like you said, Zion is probably most likely done for the year. And he wasn't playing great. I was telling a few of my colleagues, I said there were some teams that went after him right away. So it'd be interesting to see if that's what the game plan is for Carolina, is to go up top, run the ball. Now, I did see a lot of play action pass. I saw bootlegs because they want to get, Bryce not that tall, really can't see over the line. You want to get him outside of the pocket. So I expect Todd Bowles to bring some blitzes from the perimeter, from the second level, to try to confuse the young quarterback. But I just think if they can't match up in the secondary, it's going to be a long day. So those corners will get tested. Dean needs to play better, and Antoine Winfield needs to get back to creating turnovers. And obviously, Levante David has lost a step. So they're trying to figure out. They're throwing anything at the wall just to see what sticks at linebacker.
Hey, Phillip Rivers might have been playing catch with his grandkids, not just his kids out there. But no, it was a pretty cool moment to see. But yeah, as you mentioned, I think Tyke Smith and Cade Otton are the two that I want to see back on the field this week. Obviously, Tyke's been I would argue he's been the best. Dean played really well earlier in the season. I would argue Tyke might be the one that's playing the best in the secondary this season. And so you need him back, especially with all the weapons that Panthers have with McMillan. And then, Bryce has had a good year throwing the football. And then as far as Cade, it is kind of funny that the game he missed, they finally throw a touchdown to a tight end. But it would be nice to have him back, because I do feel like, and I know Godwin is this, and I know Evans is this too, but Cade kind of feels like Baker's safety net to an extent too. He looks for him on those checkdowns, as you mentioned, Marcus, and there were several times, and I know Godwin and Evans were out, but there were several times in critical moments in different games this year, he's looking for Cade to make a play. And so just having that extra threat on the field would be good. My question to both of you guys would be, Marcus, you mentioned adding players this late in the season, mainly because you want to keep their rights for next year, possibly. Does it feel like it's more of a desperation move? That's kind of how I feel like they're just reaching for anything, any kind of shakeup. JPP, I think, was more for a locker room, like that kind of leadership, although we'll see. But like Anthony Walker, he's started some games in the NFL. And so are they just trying to reach for anything?
Well, it makes you wonder why they let him go in the first place, if they ever had plans to possibly re-sign him. They probably didn't foresee themselves being in this predicament. But I think it's like having a leak in the ceiling. It's like, if my ceiling was leaking and I don't do something about it, then that leak's going to become a flood in that right above me, the bathroom, this ceiling will cave in. So I think that it was a desperation move, but they have to come up with something defensively just because what they have just isn't working. And they weren't in this position when they were 6-2. And that's why sometimes when you win in the NFL, you don't really see your flaws. You don't really see something that can come up and bite you later on in the season. But the problems that they're trying to solve now were there then too. Bowles came up with a nice exotic blitz package that were allowing them to sack people by committee. You haven't seen that. Now people are blocking him. They know when he's going to blitz. They know which parts on the defense to attack. They know that Vita Vea is going to get a little pressure, but he's a run stopper. He's not just going to just get in the backfield all the time, so you can block him one-on-one sometimes in pass rush. They know you can throw the ball in between the hashes at both linebackers, David and whoever they put out there. So they also know who they can go after in the secondary too. So at this point, I'm going to say it this way. You have to, in this league or in college or anywhere, you have to earn the right to rush the passer. So they haven't been able to stop the run very, very well in the last few weeks. That's why they're not in those passing situations to even rack up the sacks anymore. You have to earn the right to rush the passer. So when you start bringing in a JPP, that is for leadership, possibly a guy that can get in there and give you something, because they haven't been able to get those sacks off the edge in recent games. The one thing I want to kind of touch back on real quick, James, before you go is, it didn't surprise me that the Saints beat the Panthers because they beat them the first time. When you beat somebody the first time, it really becomes mental. And like I said, Carolina found a way to lose. And the reason I brought that back up is because I really think this game could come down to more mental. Like Jaron, you said that it's pressure on the Bucs. I mean, it's probably more pressure on the Panthers, I think you said. But I think it's pressure on Tampa Bay. I mean, they're the one that's on a ridiculous type losing streak. You lost 2 at home. You were in first place by yourself. You had an easy cushion, and you don't have it anymore. So now you're going to get your chin checked, and we're going to find out, can you, now that you have your roster back on offense, there's no more excuses. Yeah, your line is still a little banged up, but Carolina found a way to lose to a Saints team that found a way to beat them the first time too.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think more pressure is on the Bucs. Now, I will say that it's probably better that they're on the road. They've actually been a better road team than a home team, and you don't have the fans you usually want the fans on your side, right? But when your own fans start booing you, that also starts to play into it, where it's like it just compounds the pressure on you. So, yeah, it's the Panthers are the ones, Marcus, I think you said it earlier, they're playing with house money. There aren't a lot of people that expected them to be in the situation that they're in. And it's the Bucs that are having the same level of collapse that we saw from Atlanta last year that opened the door for the Bucs to win the division in the first place. And the more they keep pressing, the more that they are struggling, because they know they have to have it. And yes, they can lose this game and still, win the division if they beat Miami, if they beat Carolina in the final week. And then they also need one loss over the last 3 weeks from the Atlanta Falcons in order to actually solidify that playoff spot. But if you lose this one, what makes you think you're then going to travel to Miami and beat them and then host the Panthers and beat them? Because since the bye, this team is 1-5. Like it's going to take a lot more than, grasping at straws for JPP and Anthony Walker and those guys to pull this team out of the tailspin that they're in. And I mean, if they don't win this game, they're not going to win again the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's fair. And I will say this, because Marcus said his famous line on the show, you have to earn the right to rush the passer. I'm watching a game this weekend on Fox. I think it was the Tom Brady game. I don't remember which game he was calling. And he said, you have to earn the right to rush the passer. And he was talking about, stopping the run. I said, that must be a Michigan thing. Him and Marcus.
No, they just be taking my material, Jaron.
Yeah, as soon as I said that, I saw that, I almost rewound it and videoed it and sent it to you. But I was like, it must be a Michigan thing. But all right, coming next, we're going to talk about some of the games from this past weekend, but also look forward to different games this weekend, as James mentioned, with Atlanta being a key game. Really, all their games rest away unless they can lose one. We'll break all that down coming up next.
You ever feel like your money just disappears each month? It happens fast. A few subscriptions here, an impulse buy there. Suddenly, the numbers in your bank account don't match the numbers in your head. Rocket Money helps you get clarity, track every dollar, and stay in control of your finances. It especially helps during the holidays when you're going on these shopping sprees and all of a sudden you look at that account and you go, ooh, I might have overdone it. Managing your money should not feel like a second job. Rocket Money does the heavy lifting for you so you can save more and stress less. Rocket Money finds subscriptions that you forgot you were paying for. It helps you clean them up quickly. Then the bill alerts and spending notifications help you catch the small things before they turn into big expenses. Having the app find good times to save each month also keeps you consistent with your financial goals. Take control of your finances and cancel your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on.
All right, Bucs Squad, we're back for another segment to go around the NFL. I want to start with some of the games from this past weekend because there were several games that we were looking forward to, and I thought a lot of them were really good. Denver and Green Bay was a really good game. Sad to see the Micah Parsons injury. Sad to see the Patrick Mahomes injury. Chiefs are out of the playoffs after that loss to the Chargers. You mentioned Philip Rivers getting to come back, and really they should have won the football game over Seattle, but they blew that game late. The Browns game, and I know we say this every week that we don't want to just talk about Shadur all the time, but have you, and Marcus, you can send this to you, have you ever seen, because we've kind of hinted at maybe it's Stefanski kind of sabotaging, and we're kind of jokingly talking about it, but then I don't know if you saw about the wristband incident that happened. First, he apparently didn't have the first two drives on his wristband, the plays. And when they asked Stefanski afterwards, he was like, oh, well, they must have just flown out or something. But then it came out that maybe they just didn't put him in or they switched the plays. Or I've never even heard of something like this happening.
Yeah, that's inexcusable, man. Like, I don't want to accuse anybody of sabotage, but there's no telling if a wristband was switched. I mean, I don't see the plays slipping out. I mean, this is the NFL, top of the line equipment. And they were going to lose anyways, playing the Bears. I don't know why he would sabotage a young quarterback. But speaking of Chicago, I just think that they are much better than people think. And their brand of football is very physical. They run the football. And I was just, when you go around the league, I was kind of surprised to see all the high scores. I mean, if people were betting on our beloved FanDuel, taking the over on a couple of them games would have been really wise and some sure bets. I mean, Josh Allen's not going to wow you until it's time for him to make a play and come back and win. And Travion Henderson going for 148. I just thought that New England might have just got their chin checked in a way to where you're not who we thought you were. And they were at home. They're still a good team. I don't know if they're the type that'll get beat by a wild card team. But when you look at what Jacksonville did to the Jets, I mean, it's Trevor Lawrence, and I mean, you know, he does good things against bad teams, but to watch Houston put up 40, I mean, these scores, I'm looking at some of these defensive coordinators trying to figure out, I mean, even the Rams. I mean, the Rams gave up 34. It was 41-34 against Detroit. Obviously, you know, that's Matthew Stafford's former team, so he went in there and gave him 368. But I just thought that the teams really that were supposed to win, other than Carolina, really kind of showed up. So, I mean, Cincinnati, I mean, you just can't trust them at all. And then obviously, Philadelphia's trying to stay where they are and hold off those pesky Cowboys. So, I just thought it was a lack of defense, man. I mean, it's mid-December, and I know some of these teams are in good weather cities. But just some of the lack of defensive, I don't know if it's execution, I don't know if it's scheme, but some of these guys may get canned here in the next 3 weeks.
And I will say, James looked like someone that maybe lost a playoff fantasy game due to Travion Henderson. I saw your head drop as soon as he mentioned that.
I was the 1 seed, man. I was the 1 seed and lost to somebody that got in on a triple tiebreaker because Travion Henderson went off. And then, Marcus, you mentioned a lot of high-scoring games. Who would have thought that the second highest over-under of the week would be one of the worst fantasy games there was between the Ravens and the Bengals? Isaiah Likely, no targets, had more routes run than Mark Andrews for the first time since week 8, and he had no targets. It was this entire past weekend of football was just awful, and I hated every minute of it. And to go back, Jaron, to your initial point, this is why I was so hesitant to talk about Shador last week, because everybody was going crazy over it. I'm like, but it's the Titans. Can we pump the brakes? It was the Titans. And then he goes up against one of the best defenses in the NFL and just got, it didn't matter if he had the Bears plays on his wristband. He was going to get cooked by that defense. Again, long way to go. He's got plenty of time to develop, but that's why the overreaction of social media always drives me insane, because it's like one good game and they're getting crowned, and then one bad game and it's like, oh, but ignore that and just pay attention to the more important games. It's just it was wild. We'll see how he finishes out the season. We'll see if he and Stefanski can actually develop some sort of relationship and start to get on the same page with one another, because I think he's got potential. I just the overreaction is what gets to me every time. Taking a look at the coming games, because again, last week of football didn't happen. I've put it out of my mind. Instead of watching football, I would have rather just binged the entire Raise the Flags Buccaneer series on Amazon. Instead, I did that on Saturday, so I had to watch football Sunday. But I think the right out of the gates, Thursday Night Football, the Rams and the Seahawks, that's a huge game as far as playoff implications, NFC seeding, all of those things. It's going to be absolutely epic. How are the Rams going to bounce back with Devontae Adams probably being done for the rest of the regular season? Is Sam Darnold going to be able to get back to what we've seen earlier? He had a decent game this past week, but you only come away with 6 field goals. That's not going to beat the Rams. You've got to find a way to get JSN back in the end zone and kickstart that offense. The Saturday games, Philadelphia is they're going to destroy Washington. That one, it'll be background noise while I wrap Christmas gifts. But Green Bay, Chicago, another one with huge playoff implications. If Chicago wins this game, they could end up winning the division. Green Bay wins this game, Chicago could find themselves out of the playoffs entirely. So that one is going to be huge. And then the other game that I'm really going to kind of keep an eye on is that Atlanta-Arizona game, because of the exact situation we just talked about. If the Bucs lose to the Panthers, they need the Falcons to lose a game in order for them to be able to get in. If they beat the Dolphins in week 17, if they beat the Panthers in week 18, you need that Falcons loss. It would be helpful if they just go ahead and get it out of the way right now. So I am going to be keeping an eye on that one. In really the 4:00 slate isn't great. Jacksonville, Denver, I think is going to be a really, really interesting game. But other than that, the 4:00 slate, not a whole lot of excitement going on. So I'll have the Falcons and Cardinals game on to follow along with the NFC South.
Yeah, the games earlier in the week I think are the best games. The one on Thursday and then the ones on Saturday. And if Atlanta can get that loss out of the way, that'd be great. If they don't, I believe they play the Rams next weekend. So that would probably be their loss if that's the game. If it makes you feel any better, James, in my fantasy league, I had 4 guys left and only down 18 points, and I lost by 3 with 4 guys left. And combined, they couldn't score 18 points, and I lost by 3. So I feel your pain in the fantasy realm. But, the afternoon game, obviously, in the earlier window, you have Tampa and Carolina that we'll obviously have our eye on. But there's not really any great games earlier. Later on, I do have an eye on that Pittsburgh-Detroit game, because I think Pittsburgh is starting to round into form and play some pretty good football. And, it was funny because just before this weekend, I saw a lot of people saying that Mike Tomlin should move on. I think Ben Roethlisberger even said that Mike Tomlin should be moving on from the Steelers. But I actually think that should be a pretty fun game to watch between those two. Outside of that, New England and Baltimore could be fun. New England just absolutely blew that Bills game. I think they were up 21-3 or something like that. And Buffalo comes rallying back to win that game. So we'll see if they can like punch back and get back on top. But yeah, I mean, there's not a ton of great games after the 3:00 window. I think my favorite game of the week though is Green Bay and Chicago, in my opinion.
Yeah, I tell you what, it'd be nice to see Mike Tomlin just take it on up to Michigan. That's a different conversation. But I think for me, one of the games I want to see is Jacksonville, Denver. I mean, it's explosive offense at Jacksonville against this pretty solid defense at Denver. Obviously, Denver's having a great year. We know about Tampa and Carolina. And, it's really nothing else on there for me. I want to see if Pittsburgh can go into Detroit and rough them up a little bit because Detroit, seems like the type of team that got away from what made them good the last couple of years, which was high-powered offense, but played really good defense whenever they needed to. And I mean, so Pittsburgh, one of the things that they did, they can't fool me. They're trying to get Aaron Rodgers his confidence back. There was a lot of quick passes. I know he completed at a high clip, but the game plan that they really ran was to get the ball out of his hands as quick as possible. And they were making some throws, and those guys caught the ball and got up out of there. And then they were able to jump on a bad Miami team early. So I think the weather kind of helped them out too. But playing indoors, I don't know. I think Detroit gets Pittsburgh. So that's going to put a really big focus on that Ravens game. How is New England going to respond on the road? Baltimore coming off that good win defensively. I mean, they didn't look overly impressive, but when you start shutting people out, then it's like, hey, it's grown man football. But how is New England going to respond? I mean, are they really going to be able to go in there? It kind of reminds me of after the Bucs played the Rams, and then the Rams had to go out in Carolina and got popped. I mean, it's just kind of like you just don't know who these teams are from week to week, especially after they take a certain kind of loss. But that's kind of pretty much for me. But I never mind watching a good old-fashioned Jim Harbaugh game, so I'm going to keep an eye on them. Hopefully he can get Dallas up out of there. I kind of ride with my Michigan guys, players, and coaches an awful lot. I was a Tom Brady guy when he won the Super Bowl in 2020. So that's pretty much where I am, but I'm probably more dialed into this Carolina and Tampa Bay situation. It really just – it's going to be that 1:00 game where I'm going to be sitting there just like this, and I'm going to be writing some things down, and I'm going to be so ready to go after that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, this really is, the more I look at it, the more disappointed I am in this entire slate of games. I'll throw one more out there, and the people that are watching and listening to the show are not going to be dialed into it, but I'll have it on in some capacity. It's Kansas City, Tennessee. Like, it really stinks what happened to Patrick Mahomes. Obviously non-Chiefs fans are celebrating the fact that they're not going to make the playoffs. And then if the Bucs do make the playoffs, they have the longest active playoff streak in the NFL. But Mahomes didn't have to go out like that. If the Chiefs weren't going to make the playoffs, you don't need Mahomes tearing his ACL. But now they're in a situation where is Gardner Minshew going to go out there and win them football games, or are they about to kind of trail off into the sunset on a losing streak and put themselves in a situation where they can have a top 10? I don't know if they can I don't think they can reach the top 5, but a top 10 pick. Now, all of a sudden, if you're adding a legit number 1 receiver to that offense, if you're adding a legit running back, Jeremiah Love's getting top 10 talk. You add Jeremiah Love to that offense. How is Kansas City going to be able to take advantage of this situation and be right back in the mix next year? So I'm interested to see how that season finishes out, there in KC.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not saying they will end up doing this, but Tom Brady, when he was with the Patriots, they had 2 different dynasties. They had that early dynasty that was built on the defense, and then they had the later dynasty that was built on the offense. I think we're probably seeing the end of this version of the Chiefs dynasty. Now, it'll be curious to see what version they go into next. And so this dynasty is kind of been built on, yes, some defense, but early on it was Patrick Mahomes throwing it 70 yards down the field, throwing all over the place. I really like the Jeremiah Love idea because and that's something I've been seeing as rumors too. I think the next version of the dynasty could be leaning on the run game with Mahomes still being excellent, but not having to rely on him to throw all over the yard. And there's been several games this year that he's had to lead them in rushing, which I think probably played a part in his injury, honestly. And so if they can get a legit running back in there like Jeremiah Love or get that number one wide receiver in there, well, or maybe they still trade for Tyreek Hill, even though he's injured, and try to bring him back or something. But coming up next, we will give our final breakdown of the game and our score predictions. Don't go anywhere. All right, Locked On Bucs Squad. It's our final segment here where we give our score predictions and our final kind of breakdown of the game. I mentioned in the first segment, again, I think it's going to come down to turnovers in this one. When Panthers force turnovers, they force them in bunches. Obviously, we had the interception this past week that ended up costing Tampa Bay. But before that, I thought they looked pretty good offensively. I don't think they can stop the Panthers run game. And I think the Panthers are a better run team than a passing team, but because of how bad the Bucs are in the secondary, I don't think they're going to have trouble throwing the ball either. So I really don't see many ways for Tampa to be able to stop Carolina's offense. So I think Carolina is going to win this one. I'm going to go somewhere like 26-17, 26-20, something like that. I think Carolina does pull it out at home. And to James's point earlier, I think they, or maybe it was Marcus that made the point, but I think they kind of show that they have grown, even though it was just a week ago, have shown that they've grown a little bit and get the win this weekend. And mainly because I just can't, like we talked about last week, I can't pick Tampa until I see it the way they're playing right now.
I'm going to pick Carolina as well. And I think the game is going to be like a 31-27 kind of affair. For Atlanta to be able to put up 29, 15 in the fourth quarter, I mean, I thought that was embarrassing to blow a 2-score lead like that at home against that football team. And I think that Carolina's going to be licking their chops a little bit. They just gave one away to the Saints, and the Saints just roughed up the Bucs too. So it's hard to know who's who in this division right now because records really don't matter. It's all about really it's comes down to like boxing. Styles make fights. So can Tampa Bay outrush? I think whoever has the most rushing yards wins this game, and I think that's going to be Carolina. And I think Baker's actually going to play well. I just hope the Bucs aren't falling into a trap where they're just trying to feed everybody. Like, they have a lot of mouths to feed offensively. And this is what we wanted, was a full slate of talent at this point of the season, but you still have to win. Even though you got all your guys and everybody's getting their touches, it's going to come down to, can Tampa score more than 30 points? And defensively, in this 1-5 stretch that James mentioned, their defense is giving up 29 points, and offensively they're only putting up 21.7. So what that's telling me is that's very lopsided, and it reflects in their record. And it didn't matter who they were playing. I mean, 30 points is 30 points defensively in the last 6 games. So like I mentioned in the first segment, I think Todd Bowles is now getting dialed up. I think he's second guessing himself. He's playing a lot more zone. These guys can't locate receivers. They don't drop to the right spots. So in the NFL, when you have guys that can't play zone, then you have to play man. And if you're playing a lot of man and you can't cover the guy, then you're just damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think the Bucs need to get Carolina in like long yardage situations. They have to win on first down. If you're going to let Carolina run the ball and get 4, 5, 6 yards on first down, check it down, and then it's 3rd and 1 after 2nd and 4, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I'm going Carolina. I think it's a 31-27 game, probably something like 13-10 at halftime, and then it just turns into a weird little shootout. And but I just think whoever runs the ball for the most yards, so Bucky and those guys got to get it going. But this Carolina team could potentially run the ball down Tampa Bay's throat and keep this offense off the field.
Yeah, it's funny you gave that score prediction. I said in my last episode, I think it's a race to 30. I think whoever gets to 31st is going to end up winning this game. And the other thing that I said last week was I can't believe in the Bucs until they give me a reason to. And this is a team that's a couple of defensive plays away from beating the Patriots, from beating the Saints, from beating the Falcons. So it's like they're close. And I can't remember if I said it on this show or if I said it on the regular Locked On Bucs, but this feels like a team that has lost all confidence in itself, and they keep waiting for that one thing to go wrong for everything to snowball out of control. And when you're going up to the line of scrimmage and you're not confident in what you're doing as an individual, what you're doing as a team, what you're doing, in your scheme, then you've already lost the down and you're going to lose the game. And I just feel like on the defensive side, we saw Vita and Antoine getting after Hassan Reddick. We saw, the frustration from Todd Bowles after the game. We saw Kendall Vildor having a massive mental error by not playing deep enough in a cover two and not guarding the sticks and allowing a first down. We're seeing all of these little things, and they continue to compound. So now you're no longer trusting the guy next to you to do their job, and you're having to worry about doing your job and cover them to do their job. And it just becomes a huge mess. And I don't know what it's going to take to get them out of this funk outside of just getting the season over with and moving on to next year. So I do think the Panthers end up winning this game, taking a stranglehold on the division and really putting themselves in a situation where they are going to be able to make the postseason. So I'm not going to give a score yet, but I do think the Panthers end up coming away with this one.
The other thing that kind of got me concerned is the Bucs gave up 476 total yards in their last game to the Falcons. I mean, that's a lot of yards. That's almost 500 yards, 7.2 per play, 365 through the air, 8 yards per pass. And they still managed to run the ball for 111. So for me, it's like, if you're going to let the Falcons do that to you, and James, you're a Bucs historian, and you called it, you said Kirk Cousins was going to do what he did, and for some strange reason, he just did it. And it's like, well, I don't know if Bryce Young can do the same thing, but at the same token, man, just the last 2 weeks, you let Tyler go out there and get busy on you with his legs. Bryce's legs could become an issue for this defense. You start playing zone, he'll pick you apart. You play man, somebody's got to get the quarterback on the ground, and Bryce will run. He's not the biggest guy, but he will get out of there. And I think if the Bucs lose this game, they will tank it. I think they're going to throw in the towel. It's not going to be like last year in that final regular season game against the Panthers and you win and get in. I think you get clipped by Miami too. I think Miami will look and say, we got a wounded duck coming in here. We're not going to be the team to help you win a division. We're going to slap you around and get you up out of here too, because our season is jacked up. And I just think this is the Bucs Super Bowl for me. To hell with the playoffs. You won't even get to the playoffs if you don't win this one. That's the kind of mentality they should be coaching with this week. If I was on this team, if I was a veteran guy, if I was a coach, I'll be telling them, hey, this is a win or go home situation. No, it's not the end of the world. Anything can happen. But don't try to just go in there and say, we'll get them next time, because you know what Apollo Creed told Rocky. There is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. And every game's a playoff game now for the Bucs. And they need to get in a playoff type form and start peaking. And they're playing a team that you had a head start on, that finally caught up with you, thanks to everybody else that you had to play. Oh, one thing too that I want to say is that the Bucs scheduling, like the weirdest scheduling in the NFL is when you win your division, you actually get a very hard schedule the next year. Like you get the number one, like you get the divisional champs of the, like 1 play 1s and 2 play 2s, 3s and 4s on down. So when they came out of that bye week, they ran into some stuff, man. And so they've had a pretty tough schedule, but you weren't supposed to lose to the Saints and Falcons, and you wouldn't be in this situation. And Carolina's telling themselves the same thing. Hey, if we don't drop these 2 to the Saints, we're in first place by 2 games. And now it doesn't matter for us. So I think both teams have found a way to not put the other guy, their last opponent, away. Neither one of them did. So I think they're both questioning themselves. and they're licking their chops at each other. But I think from more Tampa Bay, they need to have more urgency than anybody, especially on the road.
Yeah, and my biggest concern for this Tampa team, because as you mentioned, Marcus, I could definitely see them losing to Miami if they lost this game, and the whole season just kind of snowballs at that point. But I just feel like if you look at the history of sports, as soon as you have coaches start blaming players for losses, which we saw with Todd Bowles basically blaming the players, then you have players getting into it. Then you have, the offense players blaming the defensive players and vice versa publicly. You could just tell there's a fracture on the team right now. And usually when that stuff starts happening, I just feel like it always results in the team just starts snowballing. And you're always like, man, they're so talented. They're going to get right. And they just never do. And they never do, never do. And then they ultimately fire their coach in the offseason and you move on. And I just feel like if they don't win this weekend, that's the path they're going on. And they might even be on that path anyways, even if they win the game. That's the crazy part. But I just feel like that's the path they're on right now.
Well, and the most important thing that we need to keep our fingers crossed for and keep our eye on is for Mike Evans to get 243 receiving yards in this game, because that would keep him on pace for 1,000 this season, despite missing all of that time. And I just looked, there have been, just out of sheer morbid curiosity, there have been 40 players in NFL history to get 242 receiving yards in a game or more. It's only happened 5 times in the last 10 years. And 2 of those times were Jamar Chase, but one of those times was against the Buccaneers. So, who knows? Maybe Ted McMillan's going to go for 243 instead, because this defense is just, it's bad. It's bad, guys. And it's really depressing.
Well, playmaking is contagious, guys. And what I mean by that is if I get an interception, James, you might get one, and Jaron gets a scoop and score. Kind of like that Saints game that we saw with the Bucs, the first go round, where Antoine made some plays, Nelson made some plays. It was just like, but if playmaking is contagious, so are mental errors and missed assignments. And then so now if you don't trust the guy next to you, to your point, Jaron, you start pointing fingers. And I know coaches speak is what it is, but if you listen to what Todd Bowles doesn't say, that's what I listen to, is what he doesn't say is we've got some guys that aren't executing. We've got some guys that I don't trust and guys that don't listen. What he says is we have to coach it better and we have to play it better. And that's what he keeps saying. But underneath that, when you watch your teammate on film and he turns it down and you look at him in the meeting like, man, you just cost us a game, man. Like, this is still football. I mean, these are guys getting paid. Everybody wants to go to the playoffs. Some of these guys were on that Super Bowl team. They've been a part of this run that they've been able to have in the NFC South. I'm just not sure if this late season magic, the mid season debacle will turn into a late run to win the conference or the division. I just don't know if this team has it. I just don't know. I don't know if the injuries probably kept some of the camaraderie, even though they won some games with the injury, but there just was a lack of camaraderie amongst the elder statesmen and the real leaders on that team. But it would be nice to see Mike get about 240 though.
Yeah, it would definitely be nice to see that happen. But yeah, it's just, it's kind of sad where this season has gone, because earlier in before the year started, it looked like it was going to be a really promising season with all these offensive pieces. Then the start of the season was really good despite all the injuries. Then it was like, okay, we talked about it because we did our first show. What was it? It was over the bye week, I believe, was our first show. And so we're talking about, hey, you're going to get these guys back, and then we're rolling. And then for this season, just kind of crashed. It's just, it's just weird to see it all happen. And then I never thought we'd get to the point where Todd Bowles is dropping 7 F-bombs and a press conference answer, which we talked about on the post game. It's just, you can just see when it gets to that point, the frustration for everyone, players, coaches, all of them, you can just see it's there. It's real. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to end well for Todd Bowles. And I did see, James, I think you responded to the person, but someone in the comments mentioned that this is kind of the end. But no, the window to win is still there. Just because you had this struggle at the end and you might have to move on from Todd Bowles, that doesn't change the window. The window's there. Now you have to find the coach to maximize it, but the window is still there because there's a lot of young players And then they obviously have to hit well in the draft, and then hopefully you can bring in some free agency pieces to kind of fill the gaps. But all right, so that's it for us today. We will be back for our post game, typically about 5:30 Eastern time is what we've been doing. So we'll try for something like that. James will obviously do his post game video as well. Again, this is just extra content twice a week that we do. James does his show. This doesn't take away from that. He still does a great job with that. So follow along with him throughout the week. And until next time, fire the cannons.